Alone by Edgar Allan Poe. From childhood's hour, I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source, I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. Then in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold. From the lightning in the sky as it passed me, flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the cloud that took the form when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view. Alone by Edgar Allan Poe. I am Bruce Janu, and this is Poetry Corner, dedicated to the poetry and the writing of Edgar Allan Poe. I decided to jump right in this time with a poem by Poe on solitude. I am sure this is something that we all could relate to, especially during this time of social distancing. For romantics like Poe, solitude and loneliness was a common thing. In Frankenstein, for example, the monster is so alone that he begs his creator, Dr. Frankenstein, to create for him a companion. Poe wrote this poem alone when he was around 20 years old or so. The thing is, this poem was never published during his lifetime. It wasn't even discovered until decades after his death. He had written the poem in an autograph book for a woman named Lucy Holmes. The poem was originally titled Original, but it was given the title Alone when it was first published in 1875, nearly 30 years after he died. This solitude that Poe writes about is a solitude steeped in sadness, a sadness that would become synonymous with Edgar Allan Poe. Other writers at the time also wrote about solitude, especially in nature. Nature and nature's beauty was a common theme in romantic literature. But in Poe's poem, he is young and so despondent that he can't even admire nature. Many writers see this as an early sign of Poe and the melancholy that would come to define him. He was prone throughout his life to fits of depression. Loneliness and solitude run like a river through romantic art. Other artists at the time reflected on solitude as well. Beethoven's most famous sonata, the Moonlight Sonata, also reflects on solitude. Caspar David Friedrich, a German romantic painter, painted beautiful, lonely landscapes like Abbey in the Oaks, ruins of an abbey in a dark, leafless forest. And probably more in tune with Poe's version of loneliness was Henry Fuseli, who painted a despondent figure, cross-legged, in the darkness, hair hanging limply. It is simply called silence. It's pretty powerful stuff. And that was the nature of Romanticism, hitting you in the face with powerful emotive imagery. But to some, solitude was welcome. In the Romantic age, there was nothing more romantic than being alone, by oneself, usually wrapped in the beauty of nature. This was captured by another Romantic poet, Lord Byron. Lord Byron was the epitome of a Romantic poet. He was, first off, a weirdo. He was, but most Romantic poets were. He was an English poet who was friends with Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley. In fact, it was Byron who suggested that they have a contest to see who can write the best ghost story. And out of that, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. Byron's words became the standard for Romantic poetry. In fact, in Poe's early career, he kind of modeled himself after Byron. Byron wrote much about solitude. Like this poem he wrote in 1815. Solitude by Lord Byron. To sit on rocks, to muse over flood and fell, to slowly trace the forest's shady scene where things that own not man's dominion dwell, and mortal foot hath never or rarely been. To climb the trackless mountain all unseen with the wild flock that never needs a fold, alone over steeps and foaming falls to lean. This is solitude. 'Tis but to hold converse with nature's charms and view her stores unrolled. But miss the crowd, the hurry, the shock of men, to hear, to see, to feel, and to possess, and roam alone, the world's tired denizen. With none who bless us, none whom we can bless, minions of splendor shrinking from distress. None that, with kindred consciousness endued, if we were not, would seem to smile the less of all the flattered, followed, sought, and sued. This is to be alone. This is solitude. Solitude by Lord Byron. 2 poems for the price of 1 on this episode of Poetry Corner, and that is all the time we have for today. Share your favorite poems. Use the hashtag #SharePoetry. This show is now available as a podcast as well. It is available now on all podcast platforms, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Anchor, Spotify even, so you can subscribe and listen there as well. I am Bruce Janu. Thanks for joining me. On the next episode of Poetry Corner, we're going to be delving into a short story from Poe. That's right, we'll be listening to the beating of a heart in one of Edgar Allan Poe's most famous short stories. That is next time. See you next time. Stay healthy and safe.